In the vast universe of DC Comics, gods are not rare. They walk among mortals. They shape worlds. They bend destiny with a whisper. We know the great ones, Zeus, Ares, Darkseid, Highfather, and the mighty new gods who clash beyond the stars. They are etched into legend, carved into myth. But behind the stories we remember are the forgotten gods, beings whose names once thundered through creation, but who now exist only in fragments. Whispers, dust at the edges of time. These are not the gods mortals pray to. These are the gods whose existence was erased, whose power was buried, whose legacy was stolen. And yet, their shadows linger, waiting for those who dare to look back. Long before Superman flew across the skies, before Batman struck terror in Gotham's heart, before Wonder Woman bore the mantle of Olympus, the multiverse was alive with divine wars. Entire pantheons clashed in battles that stretched across dimensions. Some won glory, others won silence. Take the old gods, for example. Before New Genesis, before Apokolips, there was only them. Titans of unimaginable strength who ruled with chaos and creation. Their war shattered the firmament of eternity itself, giving birth to the new gods we know today. Names like Yuga Khan still echo in fragments, but how many others were lost in that primal war? How many gods never survived the dawn of the fourth world? Even on Earth, the forgotten gods whisper beneath the surface. In the dark corners of myth, beyond Zeus and Hera, lie strange and ancient beings erased from memory. The serpent gods of Skartaris, who once slithered across dimensions, devouring faith until they were sealed away. The spider goddess Anansi, whose web connects stories across realities, often remembered in passing but rarely worshipped. And yet, their fingerprints are everywhere. Heroes stumble upon their artifacts. Villains awaken their slumbering fragments. When Wonder Woman draws her blade, when Shazam calls upon his power, these forces stir. For every god we name, a dozen more remain silent, their existence hidden in the cracks of lore. But silence does not mean absence. Whispers tell of Ramakrishna, a goddess of balance who dwells between life and death. Most mortals know her only as the force who gave Deadman his curse, binding Boston Brand to the living world. But Ramakrishna is older than any temple, a forgotten deity who governs not power, but karma. She is not worshipped by masses. She is known only by those whose souls are bound to justice. Then there is Malthus, a godlike figure remembered only in fragments of Green Lantern lore. Long before the Guardians of the Universe ruled from OA, the people of Malthus wielded near-divine power. Some even whispered they were gods who fell from their throne, diminished by arrogance. The Lantern Corps stands on their ashes, yet their story remains untold. Even in Wonder Woman's world, the forgotten gods linger. When Diana first set foot beyond Themyscira, she discovered gods far from Olympus, pantheons from Egypt, Mesopotamia, even the strange and cryptic gods of the deep ocean. Few remember Tiamat, the primordial chaos dragon who once threatened to drown creation itself. She is gone from modern myth, but fragments of her worship hide in shadows. And what of Cobra's cult, who worship the serpent god Naga? This ancient deity, unseen by most, fuels an entire army with fanatical devotion. Though rarely spoken of among the great pantheons, his poison has shaped countless wars in secret. He is a forgotten god, but one whose venom still burns. The truth is this: DC's history is not only the story of heroes and villains. It is the story of gods who rose, fell, and were forgotten. Some were erased by war. Others were buried by rival pantheons. Some remain hidden, waiting to return when mortals least expect it. And sometimes the forgotten gods are closer than we think. Every time a hero touches a weapon older than history, every time a villain speaks a name no one else remembers, every time the multiverse trembles with forces beyond explanation, we hear their echo. The gods' time forgot, but forgotten does not mean powerless. Because even gods left behind by history have ways of clawing back into the present. And when they return, they do not come quietly. They come to remind the living who shaped the first storms, who wrote the first laws, who bled in the wars before gods had names. And some whisper that their return has already begun. In every myth lies a truth too dangerous to be spoken aloud. And in the world of DC Comics, the line between myth and reality is thinner than silk. The forgotten gods did not simply fade away with time. Some were erased. Others were imprisoned. And some remain hidden, manipulating events from the shadows, too patient to strike until the moment is right. Take the strange case of the Lords of Chaos and Order. They are not as famous as Zeus or Darkseid, but their war has shaped reality itself. Long before men knew magic, before even the first spell was spoken, they governed balance. Some say they were gods. Others claim they were forces of nature. But names like Amethyst, Nabu, and Mordru trace their roots to these ancient entities. They are worshipped in fragments, feared in whispers, and invoked only in desperation. And when a sorcerer bends reality, it is their unseen hands guiding the scales. But what happens to a god no one remembers? The answer is darker than we think. In one hidden corner of existence, the forgotten pantheon sleeps. A group of deities created during the Silver Age, briefly introduced, then abandoned to the void of continuity. Gods like Ahura Mazda, Hecate, and Mamaragan, names that slipped from mortal lips, left with no worshippers. In comics, they appear for a page or two, then vanish. But within the lore itself, this disappearance becomes terrifying. A god's power is tied to belief. Without belief, they starve. Without worship, they rot. And what remains is not divinity, but wrath. That is why some of the most dangerous beings in DC's history are the forgotten ones. The endless are eternal because they embody universal truths: dream, death, desire, destiny. They will never fade. But gods can vanish if no one remembers them. Which means, at any moment, one can return hungrier than ever. Consider the banished pantheon once hinted at in Wonder Woman's tales. Gods so vile, so twisted, that even Olympus exiled them. They do not appear in prayers, nor in holy texts. Their names are scrubbed from history, yet artifacts tied to them continue to surface: daggers, masks, tablets. Each one carrying whispers that drive mortals to madness. When Diana or Zatanna stumble upon these relics, the gods do not awaken fully, but their voices seep through, tempting humanity to restore them. And what of the cult of the cold flame? These occultists worship gods not from Olympus or Apokolips, but older, darker places. They whisper of hidden lords who lived before creation, gods of shadow whose names are forbidden. When Constantine crosses their path, we see fragments of this truth. Gods who should never have existed, still gnawing at the edges of the multiverse. But shadows are not only evil. Some forgotten gods linger quietly, watching, waiting, reluctant to return. Ramakrishna, mentioned before, is one such deity. She guides souls through karma without demanding temples or praise. She is not forgotten by accident. She chooses it. Yet this too is power. A god who does not need worshippers is immune to time. She becomes an enigma, a deity no one controls, tied only to justice itself. Still, not every god vanished willingly. Some were buried beneath the rise of others. When the Olympians came to dominate myth, they absorbed and erased smaller pantheons. Hecate, once a goddess of magic, was chained and divided, her power scattered like seeds across generations of sorcerers. She still appears in stories, but not as she was. She is only a shadow of her former self, a reminder that even gods can be broken. The Green Lanterns hold another secret. Their rings, forged in willpower, occasionally clash with ancient forces tied to the emotional spectrum. Rage, greed, fear, compassion, hope, love. Each emotion has its champions. But deep lore reveals that before the entities were born, gods themselves once embodied those primal forces. Forgotten deities who burned too brightly, consumed by their own passion. Their fragments live on in the power of the rings. Which means, every lantern battle is not just light against light. It is the legacy of dead gods clashing through their weapons. And if that is true, then perhaps gods never truly die. Perhaps they are absorbed, transformed, buried under new symbols. Every time a hero discovers an ancient ruin, every time a villain unearths a cursed artifact, we are reminded. These shadows are still with us. But the darkest truth of all? Some of these gods are not forgotten by accident. They were forgotten on purpose, because even gods fear gods. And those who were cast aside were often too dangerous, too unpredictable, too alien for the multiverse to bear. To forget them was to chain them. To erase their name was to weaken them. But a chain rusts. A name can be remembered. A whisper can return. And whispers are rising again. The multiverse is not silent. It remembers, and sometimes it remembers the wrong things. Across the DC timeline, forgotten gods have a way of clawing back into relevance when mortals stumble on their remains. A name spoken aloud, a relic uncovered, a temple disturbed. These are not accidents, they are invitations. And when the door is cracked open, the gods step through. One of the most haunting examples comes from Wonder Woman's world. Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, was broken and scattered across history. But in the storyline known as the Witching Hour, she returned. Not as the faint shadow she had become, but as a raging storm of magic. She was proof that a forgotten god can be rewritten into existence if belief, fear, and chaos fuel her resurrection. Diana herself became a vessel of that power, nearly consumed by the weight of divinity reborn. This is the pattern of the forgotten ones. They wait, they weaken, then, when mortals least expect it, they surge back with fury. The same was true for the banished pantheon, whose relics tempted humanity until their power seeped back into the world. And for the serpent god Naga, whose venom spread through the cult of Cobra, infecting generations. These gods prove one truth. The forgotten are never gone. They are only patient. Even beyond Earth, in the cosmic expanse, gods stir in silence. The ancient beings tied to the emotional spectrum, gods of rage, fear, greed, may have been erased, but their remnants burn through every lantern ring. When an army of lanterns rises in battle, they are not only fighting with light, they are echoing the screams of dead gods who once embodied those forces. And every time that light shines, a spark of those lost entities is remembered. But what happens if too many sparks ignite? If forgotten gods are reborn, would they accept a world that no longer remembers them? Or would they punish it? Some stories hint at answers. Ramakrishna, goddess of balance, whispers through the life of dead man that not all forgotten gods seek vengeance. Some still guide, silently, without demanding worship. Others, however, would not be so merciful. Tiamat, the primordial chaos serpent, slumbers in fragments. If she were ever reawakened, her return would not be gentle. She would drown creation, rewriting the order of gods and mortals alike. And then, there is the greatest fear, the old gods of the fourth world. Before Apokolips, before New Genesis, their war shattered eternity, birthing Darkseid and Highfather's generation. But what if even one of the old gods remained? What if their echo was strong enough to wake? A single return could eclipse even the might of Darkseid. The balance of all existence would tilt in an instant. It is here that DC's greatest heroes face a terrifying truth. They are not only guardians against villains, but against history itself, against names that should not be spoken, against gods who should never return. Every mission, every battle, may unknowingly be tied to keeping the forgotten forgotten. But here lies the question. Can the forgotten ever truly stay buried? In comics, the answer is clear. The past always finds a way back. And when it does, it tests not only the heroes but the entire multiverse. Because gods are not like villains. Villains can be defeated. But gods rewrite the rules of existence. Imagine a day when Superman stands not against Lex Luthor, but against a god no one remembers, whose very name shakes the stars. Imagine Batman uncovering a cult that serves a deity older than time, forcing him into a war of belief, not fists. Imagine Wonder Woman, who embodies the legacy of Olympus, facing a pantheon that Olympus itself betrayed and buried. These are not just battles. They are reckonings. And perhaps that is the lesson of the forgotten gods. They remind us that history is not safe, that what is buried is not always gone, that divinity, once awakened, cannot be caged by ignorance. And in the DC universe, where myth and reality are one, to forget a god is not the end. It is only the beginning. So when we turn the page, when the heroes discover a new ruin, when the stars tremble with unknown names, we must ask, which god is waiting to be remembered? And when they return, will we wish we had left them forgotten? Because in the end, gods do not need us. But once we remember them, they will never forget us.